Lovely to see you. Today I
Yeah,
wanted to talk about transitions because many of our children have difficulties with transitions. It's a very common issue, and there was a question about it in the PowerWood group as well. So thank you for being here and making it more fun to have a discussion or a talk about it. Could you maybe give some examples how you have seen transitions being an issue, or with friends, or with your own children, or
yeah, sure. Yeah. I was very happy to have the conversation because it's definitely something that we have experience of. Thankfully, it seems to have got a little bit less as the years have gone on, but yeah, I'm familiar with the nature of how transitions can be unsettling. So in our house, we've had a range of things over the years, from mysterious ailments that suddenly come up towards the end of term, and they're quite insistent on that. Increased meltdowns, increased worry over things that you usually wouldn't be a worry, but they are. Definitely overtiredness as well, because we find that towards the end of terms they have lots of like extra activities, which whilst they're fun, they're kind of out of the normal routine. And I guess the children probably sense when I'm out of my usual routine as well, doing lots of extra things. So
yeah.
uh, that can be in the mix
I
as
really,
well.
I think you really put the finger on the spot there, because like when our children have a difficult, because all our children really, really want to please their parents. They really
Yeah,
want to behave. So if they don't behave, it is because something's off. There's something's
yeah,
going on
sure.
for them. And it's not only about a child, but it's also about us. We are the
Yeah.
context of our
Mm.
children. So if we are stressed, which we might be at the end of the school year, that doesn't,
Mhm.
that puts extra to the context for our children. And so, and what you say, the meltdowns and the overtiredness, um, it's
Mhm.
really helpful. Like you sound like you have a really good sense of where it's coming from, because I hear it's about the
Yeah,
end of the school year. Is that correct?
definitely. The pattern for us is around Christmas and summer term. There is always it's always very tricky, very difficult, and in fact, the children often, both of them over the years, have missed the last few days of the school because they've been actually been ill, been sick or
Yeah.
whatever. Um,
Well, that's
so
something. That's
yeah,
also something that you can use as a tool. Because if you know from experience they're going to miss the last few days as well, you might want to implement that in the month up towards,
sure,
that you
okay,
just give them a day off a week, if
okay,
that makes
yeah,
sense. You keep them home, because sometimes
yeah,
children also feel that they miss out if they really get
yes,
ill, if it is
exactly,
their
exactly,
body
yeah.
that has to tell them, I can't cope anymore.
Yeah, yeah. So we recently this year, for example, we took a few weekend days where we just didn't do, we stayed home because I knew that the weeks were like epic and we just needed to,
Yeah.
regroup. It's taken a few years to
But that's really
head on
smart, because that also
that.
gives you, as the parent, some time, some
But
low key
mm,
self care time to
yeah,
really improve your baseline. Yeah.
yeah. So I have a sort of a question in terms of when you talk about preparing. You're kind of talking about preparing ourselves because I try not to talk to the kid like really like, uh-oh, here we go again. I don't really.
No, well,
Let's
the
get organized. I don't
if
really say too much
well, and I
about that.
think that's really smart, because like
Okay.
every time we talk with our children about something that might not be easy, it kind of ingrains it in them further that it is not easy.
Okay.
And
Okay.
what you're doing, and what you have already done, and what is really helpful, is kind of play the detective to find out what is now causing this behavior in my child that is out of character. And
Okay.
like you
Okay.
have already really clear, it is about this. It's about end of school term. summer and Christmas. So you have done the detective work, you know that is the reason. And then otherwise, if you wouldn't know, you could ask yourself, what has changed just before the change in the behavior of my child? You will already also nourish yourself by having some downtime weekends, because we
Yeah.
are the context, so that you also take into account that you really have to take good care for yourself as parents. And also, what can you do? Because you know now in advance
Yes. Yeah.
that this
Exactly.
is a really challenging period for your children, the end of term.
Yeah.
So, what
Mhm.
can you do to improve their baseline? Well, you've mentioned already less social events in the weekends. I mentioned maybe keep them a day home when you think they start to become a bit
It's
wobbly.
just okay when it's just kind of tipping over. Yeah.
Yeah, to prevent them to have to get really ill because they're overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And is there anything that you can do to improve their baseline in other ways? You know, like decrease um, social events, have more downtime with them.
Yeah.
You know, like that. It's all about keeping them resilient.
Okay. Yeah.
And what?
And
Yes.
and then it's kind of just so doing this in really good time, kind of.
Yeah.
But that kind of works for me now, because I'm a bit aware that this is happening. But what if you just end up in it and
Well, when
you
you're,
know,
how you can also prepare, and that's also a tool when you're in the middle of it and you have never thought about it, and it just boom, you're there with everybody
yeah, yeah,
upset, is do
uh-huh.
the cuddle alarm. And the cuddle
Okay,
alarm
yeah,
is you set your alarm for every 15, 30 minutes, and then when the alarm goes, you do as a parent, you do the 478 to calm
mm,
yourself, and then you go to your child, so you don't bring any emotional issues to the encounter with your child. And you go to her or him and you say, "Oh, I'm so glad you're in my life." And you snuggle his or her neck and you kiss them and you walk off. You don't expect anything back. And because
okay,
teenagers can be really,
yeah,
you
yeah,
don't care.
hmm,
You really
okay,
get your moment. You express that you love them, you care for them, and if possible, you try to get some oxytocin in, you know, the bonding
hmm,
hormone,
sure,
by
okay,
touching
to
them.
boost them. Yeah, okay,
So it's a real, and you do that regularly. And if you know that this is a you know, a challenging period, you might want to start 2 months in advance.
yes, sure, sure. Okay, so that was gonna be a question as well, like how far back to
It depends. Like
kind
this
of
is
it,
also,
yeah,
you know now, because you
mm,
have been aware of it for several years,
yeah,
when
yeah,
the tension grows. So you
uh-huh, yeah,
probably know best when to start with it.
yeah.
Does that make sense? And
Yeah,
and
yeah.
if it's a
I do.
challenge,
I am starting early each year, and it just, yeah, it's more. It is helpful. Yeah,
yeah. And then
definitely.
when you're in the middle of it, that's really
Mhm.
helpful too. And I think
Yeah.
one of the things that I also see what really works for the people I work with is that you
Mhm.
have a kind of contingency plan when everything is too much. So, for example,
Yes.
have a
Okay.
plan ready to carry the transition. If you know Friday is the last day at school, have a plan for the first week. So, for
Yes.
example, you know, PJ, pajama days, only
Yeah.
films, um, familiar films, nothing new, nothing
Mhm.
triggering, read a lot of books,
Mhm.
um, um, tinker
Yep.
if they really like doing that. Does that make sense? So that you have a plan and you can also discuss it with the children so that they know what is coming. Because
Yeah.
transition fear has a lot to do with and what now. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So yeah, it does. I mean, something we've done the last few years that seems to help them is we kind of sit together, usually like on the last night of term or whatever, if we're not with anybody else, and we make a nice list of all the things that we want to do. They put their ideas in, I put my ideas in, and it's not necessarily carved out into a really clear plan then and there, but it kind of gives them an involvement in what's coming next. And
Yeah.
yeah,
And
I can structure that more, definitely.
yeah, and that is really lovely. But I think that is a different thing than what I have been talking about, because the contingency plan is really kind of what kind of low-key self-care plan can you put
Yeah,
into place if
that you can fall back
everyone
on.
is overwhelmed.
Yes. Yeah.
Does that
Okay.
make
Yeah.
sense?
Sure. Yeah.
And
Yes, it
like
does. Yeah.
what you're doing is a really sensible thing, to ask your children, what would you like to do this summer? And what will we do? And have
Yeah. Yeah.
joy in planning and looking forward
Mhm.
and having good times
Yeah.
together.
But you're talking about something more that I just have charge of as the mum, and I'm like,
Yeah,
I know that we're do this and when we
yeah.
need to. Yeah.
Because end of term also means for you, stepping into a different role.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
So that is
Hmm.
stressful for you as well. So then it's
Yeah.
really helpful if there is a period of time in which I just have to do this and everything
Hmm.
calms down again. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yes, it does.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Um,
In fact, it's also useful in going, that is also useful in going back to school, because for us, we have that same sort of,
it's exactly the
uh,
same issue.
when during that week before going back
Yeah.
is usually, yeah,
Stress.
things kind of come up again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can do exactly the same there. And what you can do to kind of cement their resilience, strengthen their resilience around transitions, is
Yeah.
when they manage
Uh-huh.
to calm themselves or to enjoy something, in the last weeks or the first week, the stress times that you say, oh, really well done. How
Hmm.
did you manage?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you very much for joining me and
Uh,
sharing your thoughts and experiences.
Thank you. It's always good to have your insight on things as well.
Well,
So
thank you for
thanks for
your
having
kind.
me.